that you respond to foods that you consume. And we'll go into it.
Yeah, great, good summary, nice.
Perfect. So should I share my screen maybe?
Yes, I think there's a button at the bottom.
Is this a full screen for everyone now?
It is for me.
Great. Okay, so thank you again for logging in. My name is Rachel Clarkson, and I'm the DNA Dietitian, as you can see. And really, I am branded this way because that's what I work with, DNA. Okay. So a little bit of background. I previously worked in the NHS as a clinical dietitian, worked under many different consultants and in different specialisms, and decided that actually I really wanted to go into private practice to be able to use genetics with nutrition and diet. So I took my 7 years of training and decided that I would treat people from weight loss to digestive health to cardiometabolic disorders, really using the power of genetics. And that's what we're going to be talking about today in hopefully a non-lecturing way. So how is our lifestyle going to affect our DNA? How can we actually keep our DNA healthy with the foods that we eat? What is personalized nutrition? And why you have these unique nutrition requirements that make you different to your neighbor or even your mother. So genetics, this is kind of one of those scientific words that puts people off. It sounds really complicated, and that's because it is. It's what makes us all unique. Okay, what makes us look different on the outside is our genetic code. And you can imagine if we all look so different on the outside, we all look incredibly different on the inside, and we all work very differently on the inside. So that's what we're able to actually figure out with this sort of testing. Now, diet and genes, and when I mention genes, I'm talking about our DNA. They are closely related. And I know that I think today I saw a advertisement for this talk, and someone mentioned how our actual lifestyle can impact our genes and gene expression. And that's absolutely right. That's a science called epigenetics. Okay. Now, many of you are probably very interested in this area. It's not my field. It's not how I practice right now, and I'll tell you why. And can everyone just mute yourselves? Is that all right? Sorry. Thank you so much. Great. Yeah, it's not how I practice, and I'll tell you why, but I have done extensive research in this area, actually published a paper in epigenetics, so it's super exciting. And it's really thinking about how your lifestyle affects and changes your DNA, okay? So how relaxed we are, the types of foods that we choose to consume, how active we are, how much we sleep. It actually is super exciting because you can turn your good genes on and turn your bad genes off. Thinking about healthy changes to your lifestyle, okay? Again, this is an area that is so upcoming, and we're unable to let's say test in this area with real confidence that it will have a clinical outcome because we're just not there yet. We can absolutely, look at the studies in cells in the laboratory, but we absolutely do not have the science right now to be able to look at this in a human being unless you are open to having biopsies all over your body, and I'm not sure that anyone wants to do that. So how can we keep our DNA healthy with that in mind in order to keep those genes, the healthy genes, turned on and the unhealthy genes? Dylan, please can you mute?
There's no disputing that.
Thank you so much. So with that in mind, wanting to keep those healthy genes turned on and unhealthy genes turned off, we want to eat for our DNA and keep it as healthy as possible. So you can see here some foods that are going to be really, really supporting your DNA to prevent any sort of issues around disease progression. So we want to think about folate, the B vitamins, zinc, antioxidants. But what you can see here are many foods that we eat on a daily basis. And so what we should be doing is just thinking about a healthy, balanced diet. And I know that sounds boring, but that's the only science that we have right now. Oh, and also we do know that broccoli actually turns genes on in the body that are really promoting kind of anti-inflammatory and antioxidants. So that's a food that we do know a lot about. So our DNA definitely predisposes us to diseases, okay? It's very well known. Does anyone relate to this? Have you ever heard about, you know, genes causing people to be more predisposed to disease? Hands up if yes. Yeah, okay. And that's absolutely right. Our DNA does predispose us to disease, but the problem with DNA testing for this instance is that we don't want to cause unnecessary anxiety around testing that actually isn't giving us a real definitive answer. Okay, so has anyone heard of Angelina Jolie? Yeah. So Angelina Jolie, the Angelina effect, they called it in Time magazine. This was when she got some genetic testing and she actually tested positive for the gene that was going to actually put her at higher risk of breast cancer. So she actually decided that she would remove both of her breasts to prevent the cancer from occurring in the first place. And many people went out and also got tested for this gene, the BRCA1 gene. And if they were positive, they maybe took precautionary measures. But the other people who didn't test positive for this gene, they had an almost, well, a sense of, you know, security that they weren't going to get breast cancer. But the problem here is that only 10% of breast cancer cases are actually caused by the BRCA1 gene. The other 90% are caused by many other factors, including other genetic factors, other genes. So do you see here why genetic testing for diseases isn't really the way forward? We shouldn't really be doing this unless it's something that's really, really rare, like a metabolic disorder like PKU. If anyone's had a baby, you'll probably remember the heel prick test that they had when they were younger as babies, and that's a testing method around a really rare metabolic disorder that would be helpful when testing. So with that in mind, what we want to be doing to actually make changes in our diet that are going to have huge health benefits based on our DNA is think about this little cycle again. So instead of thinking about how diet impacts our genes, which is what we just talked about, turning genes on and off, what we want to understand is how our genes impact our diet. And when I say diet, impact the nutrients in the food that we consume. So how do our genes actually alter the way that we absorb, metabolize, use the nutrients, and also get rid of the nutrients in the body? So if you imagine that you and your friend had the same, or let's actually all imagine right now that we all just had an early dinner, and we all had the same food, the exact same portions, we all enjoyed it. If we were to take our blood, say an hour from now, and actually figure out the nutrient amounts within the blood, we would expect, or you may expect, that we'd all have the exact same nutrients in our blood at that time because we'd all had the same food, when actually we'd all have completely different levels of those nutrients because we're all metabolizing them completely differently. So it's a super interesting area of science. So when we think about the media and all of these claims that coffee will kill you, coffee is good for you, saturated fat's bad, saturated fat's good, it's all very confusing. But there's a reason for this, because if there are enough studies out there with enough people, we will always get some people who have an increased risk of a disease based on a nutrient, some people who have a decreased risk of a disease based on a nutrient, and some people who just sit in the middle. So you can see here, and we all know that nutrition and the diet that we consume on a day-to-day basis over a long period of time will lead to a health outcome. Okay, we're going to just imagine here that this is a negative health outcome here, just to roll with this. Okay, so we know that there is a correlation between, or causation between, nutrition and health outcome. Now, Dina, please may you mute? Thank you so much. So you can see here that your genes alter the way that you respond to this nutrient. And depending on the type of variation of the gene in these different people, you can see there's an increased risk, no risk, and decreased risk. Okay, so this is why we have so many studies that show that certain variants of certain foods cause different people these health outcomes. Okay, so I just talked about, in a test, you'd be able to figure out how you absorb, how you metabolize, how you distribute, and how you uptake these nutrients in cells. So this was in the Times, well, quite a while back actually, the gene that could make your next coffee or less. And this isn't coffee, by the way, it's chamomile tea. And there's a reason for that. And I'll tell you in a minute. So you can see here 4 cups of coffee. I think I put 4 cups of coffee is safe. And those are the general guidelines for the world, okay? 4 cups of coffee, absolutely fine, okay? But the problem is that it's absolutely not fine. 4 cups of coffee can be very, very damaging per day to 50% of the population. So let's think about coffee. Many, many nutrients in it, but we're going to be thinking about caffeine specifically, okay? So let's take the same example, the same little diagram. We know that coffee is associated with heart attacks, okay, because it increases blood pressure in some people. Because genes that we possess, the different variations of the genes, can either increase your risk or decrease your risk depending on which variant you possess, okay? So not to get into the genes, but it's called the CYP1A2, okay? You can see it here. If you imagine the CYP1A2 gene coding for a Pac-Man, okay, an enzyme, something that's going to break something down, okay? So this enzyme is going to break caffeine down so that it can be excreted in the toilet, okay? Now, depending on the variation of this gene, the CYP1A2, you're going to do this really fast or you're going to do it quite slow. So you're going to be a fast metabolizer or a slow metabolizer. You're one or the other. 50% of you tonight are going to be fast and 50% are going to be slow. So you can see here the fast variation, break it down, fast, and the slow, pretty slow. But why is that important? Okay, well, some might say, I know that I'm a slow metabolizer. I know that I'm a fast metabolizer because caffeine makes me feel like this. But unfortunately for you, the CYP1A2 gene that alters how you break down caffeine absolutely has nothing to do with a different gene in your brain, which alters how stimulated you feel or how kind of shaky you maybe feel after caffeine. So you can't guess this one. So if we talk about heart attacks specifically, okay, these fast metabolizers you can see are actually below 1, and they're actually protecting themselves against a heart attack by drinking 2 to 3 to 4 cups a day. Okay, specifically 3 to 4. But the slow metabolizers are actually doubling their risk of a heart attack if they consume 2 to 3 cups. Okay, and if they consume 4 and above, they're spelling there. They're quadrupling their risk of a heart attack. And this is also supported by evidence around slow metabolizers also being at higher risk of prediabetes and also kidney failure as well. And, you know, this science is no joke, guys. This is published by Harvard and has been repeated numerous times all over the world. So this is something to think about. Let's talk about Jill. So she's a patient of mine, and she is, you know, in London. She's pretty stressed, and she's following gluten-free diet. She's always on a diet, and she's really, really tired. She just wants to figure out what's going on. So what we did with her was we took her saliva, sent it to the University of Toronto, and then we figured out with her report how we were going to actually improve what she was eating to improve her symptoms. So you'll see here, it was a really extensive panel that we looked at. We look at nutrient metabolism, we looked at cardiometabolic health, weight management, food intolerances, and why she eats the way that she does. We also looked at things like antioxidant capacity and inflammation within the body, sleep, alcohol. Remember that this isn't telling you your current level of anything. This is giving you a roadmap, and gave Jill a roadmap of how she can live her life for the rest of her life, okay, when it comes to food and lifestyle. So these results do not change. They remain the same throughout her life. And then if we were wanting to check progression or improvement of health, then we would think about blood work, etc. So just to note that before we talk about these results. So when we think about energy, because she was really, really tired, it's pretty normal for a dietitian to really uncover someone's hydration status. You know, are they getting enough B12 and iron, and what's their carbohydrate quality? There's many other factors, but let's be simple tonight.
I'm sorry, Rachel, I'm so sorry. I don't know. I'm new to this, so I'm not sure if I'm supposed to interrupt. But was she following a normal diet, or a like vegan or vegetarian or flexitarian?
So she felt like she was always on a diet. So she was always on a diet, okay. No specific one, but just kind of like going from here, there, and everywhere. Thanks so much for your question though, Emma. And if anyone has any questions, of course you can interrupt, or you can wait till the end for sure. So these are the nutrients that we tested for her, and just to note, there are more because they've been updated. This is a little bit of an old slide, but you can see here that she was actually predisposed to low levels of B12 and low iron. So when we think about B12, she was specifically predisposed to low levels because she didn't absorb and transport B12 very well from cell to cell. And with her iron, her body was predisposed to low levels because it just didn't absorb iron when it was low. It didn't have that acknowledgement that, okay, my body needs more iron. So these were areas that we looked at improving in the diet. Then when we looked at intolerances, you can see here that actually, even though she was following a gluten-free diet because she felt bloated, the gluten variant did not come back positive. And actually, she was predisposed to inability to break down lactose, and she had lactose intolerant. She was lactose intolerant. Sorry, guys, it's late, long day. And weight loss, okay? She wanted to figure out how she could not just lose weight, but actually figure out how to eat for the rest of her life to maintain that optimal body composition. So we've all heard about, you know, people talking about their genes and whether they're just predisposed to gaining weight or not being able to lose weight. And whilst that is true, there are probably around 600 genes that actually alter one's risk of being overweight or obese. We do not have the science to predict one's risk of obesity, and actually none of my patients would really find this very useful. What people want to understand, and what Jill wanted to figure out, was what are the genetic variants that can guide us with a diet of how to move forward. Okay, so that's what we did. So we looked at these variants, and you can see here that at the top, she actually had a predisposition to not be able to balance energy very well in the body. So have you ever heard of weight loss is easy, energy in equals energy out? Eat less, move more? Well, it's not that simple, especially for these people and Jill, who had this variant of the energy balance gene. She actually had a low resting metabolic rate. She had a slow metabolism. So we had to actually implement a higher energy deficit for her to see the same results. She had the AA variant of this FTO gene, the fat mass and obesity gene. It meant that she was required to use exercise quite a lot within her week in order to see optimal weight loss results and optimize her body composition. Some people don't have this variant, and therefore they have to think about food more than exercise. And then you see the macronutrients at the bottom. So you'll see that she has the AA variant of the FTO gene as well, which alters the way that she requires protein. So whilst we're all trying to get as much protein as a population, because high protein is just apparently the be and end all, it's actually only for 1 in 5 people that this is the case. Obviously, if you're exercising, you require more protein, but I'm talking about specifically weight loss and optimizing body composition. This individual, Jill, she did require a high protein diet in order to lose weight. And then you see total fat below protein. You can see here that she would not respond well to a low fat diet. And that really tells me that, okay, we need to be reducing carbohydrates. She needs to be focusing on more of a low carbohydrate diet. And then it gets even more exciting because she has a variant that actually alters the way that she requires the types of fats. So she has the power to optimize her body composition, especially the fat around her abdomen, if we think about optimizing and changing the ratios of fats that she's getting day to day. So it's very complicated, but the best thing about this is that Jill was working with me, and I don't just translate this into easy to understand recommendations on a day-to-day basis. I put this all into a meal plan if that's what she wants. Other people also just prefer to have kind of a step-by-step, what should I do on a day-to-day basis? What are the 5 top things that will get me to where I want to be so that I can eat the DNA way? But Jill found this very, very interesting. And so she was eating a lot of coconut oil in her diet, and just this last insight here, it really made us change and swap out her coconut oil for some olive oil. So she also found out that she had a predisposition to poor cholesterol if her omega-3 wasn't high enough and her omega-6 was too high. So we figured out that she required more omega-3 in the diet in order to optimize this ratio and improve her cholesterol. We found out that she was also predisposed to wanting sweet food. So she had this GLUT2 gene, or variant of the GLUT2 gene. And so we had to think about snacks that would kind of suit her sweet tooth, but not have any sort of health implication over time. And so if you are interested in nutrigenomic testing, not epigenetic testing, not disease risk testing, because remember, those are the 2 types of genetic tests that we don't want to be, thinking about. There's not the science, we don't want the anxiety. Then the test that I personally use in my practice is a test to really trust. And the reason that I really drill this in is because there are so many tests out there on the market, and this is an unregulated area of science. People can say whatever they want with no ramification. They can take your money. They can tell you you have these hundreds of genetic variants and this is what you should do with your diet. But the truth is they can literally tell you anything. And I've advised for companies before, and really had some very uncomfortable conversations when I've had to say, you can't do this. But unfortunately, a lot of the tests, if not all the tests out there, are commercially led. They are out to make money. The testing facility that I use is with the University of Toronto, and they only allow testing through a healthcare practitioner. So that's one thing I just want to get out. If you want to test yourself, if you want your family members or your friends to be tested, please go with a trusted healthcare professional who's an expert in it and who's using a trusted test. And also, don't be impressed when you see testing companies who are doing hundreds and hundreds of genes, because unfortunately we don't have the science for that. There are tests out there that are, you know, just doing too many variants, and we only increased our variants from 45 to 70 this year, just based upon the science just upcoming. So that's just something to think about. So just to summarize, one size does not fit all. We all need to eat according to our genes if we want to invest in our health. Although, you know, general dietary guidelines have their place. If you want to take things to the next level, this should be it. You do have the power to keep your DNA healthy, but really what you want to be doing is preventing any sort of exacerbation of disease in the future. And to do that, you really need to know your true requirements and whether food that you are eating on a day-to-day basis is going to be right for you. So I like to end with this little quote: positive health requires a knowledge of a man's primary constitution and the powers of various foods, both those natural to them and those resulting from human skill. And I think that they were talking about genetics, and they were talking about personalized nutrition even back then. So thank you so much, everyone. I'm now taking questions, and I'm sorry that I really was very fast with my talking, but I just wanted to get everything in.
No, that was great. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions?
In the chat. I'll read out one of Max's. He says, do you think that we know best when we're thinking about diet? And I think he means, do you think we should trust our bodies? As in, if our body says, I want chocolate, if my body says, I don't want to eat today, how much do you think we should trust our bodies?
Yeah, I think that eating intuitively is extremely important, listening to hunger signals, and also listening if your body is craving a certain food, eat it in moderation, enjoy every moment with no guilt, and then you won't have the restriction binging cycle. But what's quite interesting is when certain people get tested in clinic, they see certain variants and they say, oh, I knew it. I knew that I was this because of X. So, I mean, that's just anecdotal evidence, but it's a fun one.
Yeah. Are there any foods which are good for everyone, no matter what your DNA? Are there any just, I guess, general plants?
Plants. The more plants you eat. Sorry?
There's no gene or DNA in your body that says plants are bad for you? Or like there's no
I think that if you want one food that we know is extremely beneficial, and like I said before, can actually turn on those antioxidant genes, it's broccoli.
Broccoli. Yeah, okay. I think Dina has a question in the chat. What do you recommend for teenagers aged 16 to 18 with regards to being vegan?
Yeah, this is a big issue actually, cutting out whole food groups when we're younger and not thinking about adding nutrients that are really gonna alter your current state of health and also future health. So I would 100% recommend that anyone being vegan use a supplement by the Vegan Society called the Veg One, or I know that you guys probably have some great vegan supplements as well. This is going to make sure that you are not low in your B12, your iron, your vitamin D, your iodine, selenium. Iodine is a massive issue as a deficiency at the moment, especially in young girls who are cutting out dairy and their thyroids are just ruined.
Yeah, makes sense. Max has said, what do you think about microbiomes?
Yeah, the microbiome is super interesting, gut health. So those are all of our microbes in our large intestine that have a massive impact on our overall health. So the healthier your gut is, the more fermented foods and fiber that you eat on a day-to-day basis, the better. There is really upcoming research in the metabolites, so the toxins that these actual bacteria produce, and their correlation with sort of disease. Is microbiome testing something that we need to be doing right now? No, because the science isn't there. Will it be in 10, 15 years? I'm sure it is. I'm sure it will be, but I just don't believe that it's something that we need to be thinking about at the moment.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think final one, so both linked together. Tazy's asked, what are your thoughts on vegan diets in general? And then linked to that, Dean has asked, how can teenagers who are being vegan put weight on?
Okay. Sorry. The question was, what are my thoughts on a vegan diet? I know there are options. Are there opinions from nutritionists if you have supplements? Okay, so any sort of diet, whatever you choose, whether it's plant-based or vegan completely, is completely up to you for whatever reason, whether it be health or ethical reasons. And I think as a healthcare professional, we just have to support however someone chooses to eat. So my opinion is that I don't have one, and I'll just support my patients if they want to be vegan. But it's very important to consider the nutrients that are going to be missed from a vegan diet, and making sure that you are supplementing, because the last thing we want is ill health in a human being, when actually they're trying to be healthier probably by going vegan, but that's not the case. So yeah, supplementation is necessary 100%. And then I think
you had one final question on, I think related to a question about teens vegan.
Oh, being vegan and gaining weight. I think that's a really personal question. So I mean, there's not really was the question that they're gaining weight, or they need to gain weight, or they are gaining weight? I don't know.
Need to gain weight.
They need to gain weight. So the foods that would support with that?
Yes.
Yeah. So you want to be thinking about some really energy dense foods that are plant-based, like nuts and seeds, and adding those to the mix. Adding nut butters, for example, or also adding more healthy oils like olive oil. But that's really like personal. So I guess you'd need to maybe speak to a healthcare professional who can support you with that. But it is a big problem. And then I'm just really whizzing through these. What do I think about nutritionally complete meal replacements? Yeah, they have a place, especially for people who are wanting to lose weight and wanting a very low calorie diet. Some people really like the meal replacements. My own opinion and my experience in clinic is when people have used these meal replacements long term, like don't want to shame a diet, but the Cambridge diet, and they're having like 600 calories a day from shakes, they just ruin their metabolism, and then they come to me awfully upset because they can't lose weight anymore with food, and they've gained all the weight back after the diet. So I'm not a massive fan of them, but they have a place if they're done and used sensibly.
Cool. I think so. I can see the remaining meeting time's just 2 minutes, so I think we'll have to wrap it up to close fairly
Great.
soon.
So if anyone is interested, then I have my details up on the screen. I have got a little special offer for you guys because you came this evening, and so I'm offering a quite a big discount on one of my Kickstart programs, which includes the test and the consultation and meal planning as well. So if you are interested, just send me a DM on Instagram or send me a little email, just with like DNA, and I'll get back to you and give you more details on that.
I can also post the details in the Guardian group on Facebook.
Yeah, perfect.
Just send them over and I'll share with everyone.
Great.
And then next week, I think we're on Wednesday at 7 o'clock. We've got a Reiki, again, I can't pronounce it. Reiki specialist
Reiki.
from Goop and Women's House. Emerald and Tiger.
Amazing.
Any of you follow her?
That's amazing. Oh, I'll be sure. Can I log in? Can I be a guardian?
Yes, definitely. I'll so yeah, that's next week. All right, I'm conscious it says less than a minute remaining. So thanks everyone for joining. Hopefully see you next week.
Thanks everyone so much. Please stay in touch.
Keep an eye on the group as well.
Bye.
Thank you. That was awesome. Thank you.
Cheers all. Bye bye bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.